The shack had been empty for 3 years. Boone Carter knew this because he'd checked it twice during harsh winters, looking for shelter that never came. The door always hung loose, the floorboards always creaked in the same spots, and dust always covered everything like a burial shroud. But today, the dust was gone. 3 sets of footprints led to the entrance, but only 2 led away. Fresh breadcrumbs scattered near the window. A small fire had been recently extinguished, still warm to the touch. Someone had swept the floor clean and arranged 3 bedrolls in perfect symmetry, as if waiting for specific guests. Boone pushed the door open slowly, expecting emptiness. Instead, he found 3 Apache women sitting in complete silence, their eyes fixed on him, as if they had been counting the seconds until his arrival. They weren't surprised. They weren't afraid. They were expectant. The eldest spoke first, her voice carrying an impossible knowledge. "You're late, Boone Carter." He'd never seen her before in his life, but somehow she knew exactly who he was and why he'd come looking for firewood on this specific day, at this specific hour, to this specific place that was supposed to be abandoned. The storm outside wasn't random. The empty firewood shed at his ranch wasn't a coincidence. And these 3 women weren't refugees. They were waiting for him. They had always been waiting for him. But the question that made his blood run cold wasn't how they knew his name. It was why the youngest one was holding something that belonged to his father, who had died 20 years ago. Boone's hand moved instinctively to his chest, where his father's silver compass should have been hanging. The chain was there, but the compass was gone. His throat tightened as he stared at the young woman who held it delicately in her palm, turning it over like she'd done this 1,000 times before. "How do you have that?" His voice came out rougher than intended. The eldest woman, her weathered face marked by years of sun and hardship, stood slowly. "Your father saved my daughter's life 23 years ago, the same year you were born." She gestured toward the youngest woman. "This is Kiona. She was dying from fever when your father found us by the river." Boone felt the world shift beneath his feet. His father had never mentioned saving anyone, never spoke of Apache friends or debts owed. "He gave us this compass," the woman continued, "and promised that if we ever needed help, we should find his son and return it. He said his boy would honor his father's word." The storm outside grew fiercer, rattling the shack's walls. Thunder crashed overhead, but Boone barely heard it. His mind raced through memories of his father, a quiet man who spoke little of his past, who sometimes stared at the horizon with distant eyes. "What do you need?" he asked, though part of him already feared the answer. The eldest woman's expression darkened. "3 men are hunting us. They've been tracking us for 2 days. She paused, her voice dropping to a whisper. "They killed our husbands." Boone's blood turned to ice. Outside, beyond the storm, killers were closing in, and these women had led them straight to his doorstep. Boone stared at the 3 women, his mind trying to process the weight of their words. The compass felt heavier in Kiona's small hands, like it carried the ghost of his father's promise. "Tell me what happened," he said, settling against the shack's wall. The storm showed no signs of letting up, which meant they had time, but also meant the killers would seek shelter too. Ayanna, the eldest, exchanged glances with Dakota, a woman with sharp eyes and calloused hands that suggested she knew how to fight. Finally, Ayanna spoke. "We lived peacefully near Bear Creek, 2 days' ride north. Our husbands traded horses with settlers, kept to themselves." Her voice remained steady, but Boone caught the slight tremor. "3 white men came to our camp, said they were buyers, wanted to see our best horses." Kiona shifted uncomfortably, still clutching the compass. A bandage around her left arm was stained with fresh blood. "They weren't buyers." Dakota spoke for the first time, her voice like winter wind. "They were thieves. When my husband refused to sell at their price, they—" She stopped, jaw clenched tight. Boone didn't need her to finish. He'd seen what desperate men could do when they wanted something badly enough. "We fought back," Ayanna continued, "but there were only 3 of us against armed men. When the smoke cleared, our husbands were dead, and these men had taken everything: horses, supplies, even my daughter's wedding necklace." "But you escaped," Boone observed. "Barely." Kiona took an arrow in the arm. Ayanna's eyes hardened. "They think we died in the fire they set, but we crawled out through the back of our lodge and ran. The wind howled outside, and something crashed against the shack's exterior. All 4 of them froze, listening. 'Just a branch,' Boone whispered after a moment. but his hand had moved instinctively to his rifle. "They'll find this place eventually," Dakota said. "They're good trackers, and they know we're wounded." Boone studied each woman carefully. Ayanna carried herself like a leader, someone used to making difficult decisions. Dakota moved like a fighter, despite her injuries. And Kiona, barely 20, had the haunted look of someone who'd seen too much death too young. His father's voice echoed in his memory. "A man's word is all he truly owns, son. Everything else can be taken away." "How do you know they're still following you?" Boone asked. Ayanna pulled something from her dress, a torn piece of fabric, stained with mud and blood. "We found this caught on a tree branch this morning. It's from one of their shirts." She looked directly into Boone's eyes. "They're close, and they want us dead. The only witnesses to what they did." Outside, the storm raged on, but Boone could feel something else approaching through the darkness, something far more dangerous than wind and rain. The killers were coming, and this abandoned shack had just become a trap. The decision should have been simple. Boone could walk away, leave these women to their fate, and return to his ranch where only his own problems waited. But the weight of his father's compass in Kiona's hands made that choice impossible. "You can't stay here," he said finally. "This shack is too exposed. If they find us, we're trapped." "Where can we go?" Ayanna asked. "Kiona can barely walk with that arrow wound. And the storm. My ranch is 5 miles south. We can make it if we move carefully." Boone checked his rifle, counting the ammunition. 6 bullets. Not nearly enough if they ran into trouble. Dakota shook her head. "Too dangerous. What if they're already watching your place? Then we die fighting on ground I know, instead of dying helpless in this rotting shack." Boone met her challenging stare. "Your choice." Through the gaps in the walls, lightning illuminated the landscape in stark flashes. During one bright moment, Boone saw movement near the tree line. 3 dark shapes moving against the wind. His blood froze. "They're here." The women immediately went silent, pressing against the walls. Kiona bit her lip to keep from crying out as she moved her injured arm. Boone peered through a crack in the wood. The figures were closer now, maybe 200 yards away. One pointed toward the shack while the others spread out to flank it. "Back exit?" he whispered. "Broken boards. We can squeeze through," Dakota replied. "On my signal." Boone gripped his rifle tighter. "Stay low. Move fast. Don't look back." The killers were close enough now that he could hear their voices over the storm. Rough, confident voices of men who'd done this before. "Tracks led here, I'm sure of it. Check inside. I'll watch the back." Boone's heart hammered against his ribs. They had maybe 30 seconds before the killers reached the shack. He turned to the women. Ayanna's weathered face showed no fear, only grim determination. Dakota's hand rested on a knife at her belt. Kiona clutched the compass so tightly her knuckles had turned white. "Listen carefully," Boone whispered urgently. "There's a large oak tree 50 yards behind this shack. Get there and wait for my signal. Then we run straight south toward my ranch." "What about you?" Kiona asked, her voice barely audible. "I'll buy us time." Dakota grabbed his arm. "You can't fight all 3. I'm not planning to fight. I'm planning to survive." He looked each woman in the eye. "Your husbands died protecting you. Don't let their sacrifice be meaningless." Footsteps crunched outside, getting closer. Boone moved toward the loose boards at the back wall, helping the women squeeze through one by one. Kiona went first, biting back a cry of pain. Dakota followed, then Ayanna. As Boone prepared to follow them, the front door exploded inward. 3 men stood silhouetted in the doorway, water streaming from their wide-brimmed hats. The leader, a tall man with a scarred face, smiled coldly when he saw Boone. "Well, well, looks like our Apache friends found themselves a protector." Boone raised his rifle, knowing it was already too late to run. The leader stepped forward, his boots squelching in the muddy doorway. Behind him, 2 younger men flanked the entrance, their hands resting on their gun belts. All 3 were soaked from the storm, but their eyes burned with the cold fire of men who enjoyed their work. "Drop the rifle, friend," the scarred man said. "We're just here for the squaws." Boone kept his weapon steady. "Don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't." The leader's smile widened, revealing yellow teeth. "Fresh footprints leading right to this door. 3 sets of small feet, and the blood trail from that wounded one." He gestured casually with his pistol. "Where are they?" "Gone. Headed east hours ago." "Liar." One of the younger men spat tobacco juice onto the floor. "Saw smoke from this place not 20 minutes ago. They're here somewhere." Lightning crashed outside, and in that brilliant flash, Boone saw Dakota's face pressed against a gap in the back wall. She was still there, watching, waiting for a chance to help. The scarred leader took another step forward. "Name's Dutch Morrison. These are my boys, Clem and Pike. We've been tracking those Apache women for 2 days, and I'm getting tired of this game." "Why?" Boone asked, genuinely curious. "What's 3 women worth to you?" Dutch's expression hardened. They saw something they shouldn't have, something that could put us all at the end of a rope. He paused, studying Boone's face. "You really don't know, do you?" "Know what?" "Those women's husbands weren't just horse traders. They were carrying something valuable, something that belongs to very important people back east." Boone's mind raced. The women had mentioned horses and supplies, but they hadn't said anything about carrying valuables. "What kind of something?" he pressed. Dutch chuckled. "The kind that makes rich men very angry when it goes missing. Government contracts, shipping manifests, names of officials taking bribes." His voice dropped. "The kind of papers that could bring down half the territorial administration." The pieces clicked together in Boone's mind. These weren't just random killers. They were hired guns, sent to clean up a problem that threatened powerful people. "So you murdered 3 innocent men for some papers?" "Innocent?" Pike laughed harshly. "Those innocent men were blackmailing senators and judges, taking money to keep quiet about government corruption they'd stumbled across." "And the women?" "Witnesses," Dutch said simply. "Can't have witnesses." Thunder boomed overhead, shaking the entire shack. In that moment of deafening noise, Boone heard something else, the soft creak of footsteps behind the killers. Ayanna appeared in the doorway behind Dutch, moving like a ghost, despite her age. She held a thick piece of firewood in both hands, raised high above the scarred man's head. Dutch sensed the movement and started to turn, but Ayanna brought the wood down hard against his skull. He crumpled to the floor, blood spreading across the weathered planks. Clem and Pike spun toward the new threat, their guns clearing leather. But in their surprise, they'd forgotten about the man with the rifle. Boone fired twice, the shots echoing like thunder in the confined space. Both men dropped where they stood. The sudden silence was deafening. Smoke hung in the air, mixing with the scent of rain and blood. Ayanna looked down at Dutch's motionless form, then at Boone. "Is it over?" Before he could answer, Dutch's eyes snapped open, and his hand found his fallen pistol. Dutch's pistol swung toward Ayanna, blood streaming down his scarred face. His finger tightened on the trigger. Boone dove forward, tackling the wounded man just as the gun fired. The bullet splintered wood inches from Ayanna's head. Both men crashed to the floor, wrestling for control of the weapon. Despite his head wound, Dutch fought with desperate strength. His free hand clawed at Boone's throat while they rolled across the blood-soaked planks. The pistol skittered away into the darkness. "The papers!" Dutch gasped through gritted teeth. "Where are the papers?" Boone drove his elbow into the man's ribs, feeling something crack. Dutch howled, but didn't release his grip. Dakota and Kiona burst through the back entrance, having heard the gunshot. Dakota immediately grabbed the fallen pistol while Kiona helped Ayanna to her feet. "End this," Dakota said coldly, pointing the weapon at Dutch's head. But Boone held up his hand. "Wait." He looked down at the bleeding man beneath him. "What papers? Tell me everything." Dutch coughed, blood speckling his lips. "Government, contracts, territorial officials taking bribes from railroad companies. Worth more than you can imagine." "Where are they?" Dutch's eyes grew cunning despite his pain. "Safe, hidden where only I know. Kill me, and they stay buried forever." Ayanna stepped forward. "He's lying. My husband never told me about any papers. Your husband was smart, kept secrets. Kept, even from you." Dutch struggled to sit up against the wall. "But Kiona knows. Don't you, girl?" All eyes turned to the youngest woman. She stood frozen, the compass still clutched in her hands. "Kiona?" Ayanna's voice carried a note of uncertainty. The young woman's shoulders began to shake. I was supposed to tell you after we were safe." Her voice broke. "Father made me promise." Boone felt the ground shift beneath him again. "What promise?" Tears streamed down Kiona's face. "The papers are sewn into my dress. Father hid them there before." She couldn't finish. Dutch laughed, a wet, horrible sound. "Smart man. Who would search a grieving daughter?" His eyes gleamed with malicious satisfaction. "But now you know why she had to die. Why you all have to die." Dakota's grip tightened on the pistol. Give me one reason not to kill you right now. Because, Dutch wheezed, I'm not the only one hunting you. My employers sent 3 teams. We were just the first. He smiled through bloody teeth. Kill me and 2 more teams will keep coming. Forever. The storm outside was beginning to weaken, but inside the shack a new kind of tempest was building. Boone looked at each of the women. Ayanna, whose weathered face showed the weight of too many secrets. Dakota, whose warrior's instincts screamed for immediate action. And Kiona, barely more than a child, carrying documents that could topple governments. What's in those papers exactly? Boone asked. Kiona wiped her eyes with her free hand. Names, dates, money amounts. Proof that territorial judges and senators have been taking bribes to approve railroad land deals. Her voice grew stronger. Proof that they've been stealing from the Apache, forcing sales at gunpoint. Dutch's laughter turned into a coughing fit. Now you understand. This isn't just about murder anymore. It's about the future of the entire territory. Outside, the rain was stopping. Soon others would come looking for Dutch and his men. And Boone Carter, who had only wanted firewood, now held the fate of countless lives in his hands. The weight of the situation pressed down on everyone in the shack. Dutch slumped against the wall, breathing heavily, but still dangerous. His words about more teams coming echoed in the sudden quiet. How long before the others arrive? Boone asked. Dutch's eyes glittered with malice. Could be hours. Could be minutes. Depends on how far behind us they were. He coughed again, specks of blood hitting the floor. Either way, you're all dead. Dakota stepped closer, the pistol steady in her hands. Not if you're dead first. Wait. Ayanna placed a gentle hand on Dakota's arm. If we kill him, we learn nothing more, and his death won't stop the others from coming. Boone studied Dutch's face carefully. You said your employers sent 3 teams. Who are your employers? Men with long reach and deep pockets. The kind who buy judges and senators like other people buy cattle. Dutch's voice grew weaker, but his smugness remained. You think you can fight them with some old papers? They'll bury you so deep, no one will ever find your bones. Kiona spoke up, her voice trembling but determined. My father believed these papers could change everything. He said if honest people saw them, they could stop the stealing, stop the killing. Your father was a fool. Dutch spat. Honest people don't survive in this business. Boone made his decision. He turned to Kiona. Those papers, do you know what they actually say? She nodded. Father made me read every page. Names, dates, amounts of money paid. Railroad executives bribing officials to approve land seizures. Apache families forced from their homes at gunpoint. Their land sold for nothing. How many officials are named? Dozens. Judges, senators, territorial governors, even some federal marshals. Kiona's voice grew stronger with each word. Father said it went all the way to Washington. Dutch laughed bitterly. Now you understand why they'll never stop hunting you. Those papers could bring down half the government. The sound of approaching horses cut through the night air. Everyone in the shack froze, listening to the thunder of hoofbeats getting closer. Sounds like 6 or 7 riders, Dakota whispered, moving to the window. Dutch smiled through his pain. Told you they'd come. Boone felt the walls closing in around them. Outside, killers approached with orders to eliminate everyone who had seen the evidence. Inside, they had a dying man, 3 traumatized women, and documents that could change history, if they lived long enough to deliver them. There's a choice to make, he said quietly. We can run and hope they don't catch us. We can fight and probably die. Or what? Ayanna asked. Boone looked at each woman in turn, then down at Dutch's bloodied form. Or we make sure these papers reach someone who can actually use them, no matter what happens to us. The hoofbeats were getting closer. Time was running out. Kiona, Boone said urgently, can you get those papers out of your dress without tearing them? She nodded, already reaching for the hidden seam. Outside, the killers had arrived. Kiona's fingers worked frantically at the seam of her dress as the hoofbeats drew closer. With careful precision, she pulled out a leather pouch wrapped in oiled cloth, protection against rain and blood. Got them, she whispered, holding the package like it contained her very soul. Boone peered through a gap in the wall. 7 riders had formed a circle around the shack, their rifles gleaming in the pale moonlight that had broken through the storm clouds. They moved with military precision, covering every escape route. Dutch, one of them called out. Report. When no answer came, the leader dismounted and gestured to his men. They began closing the circle, weapons ready. "We have maybe 2 minutes before they breach this place," Boone said quietly. "Dutch, you're going to help us, or you're going to die right here with us." The wounded man laughed weakly. "Help you? Why would I do that?" "Because," Dakota said, pressing the pistol against his temple, "dead men don't collect payment." Dutch's eyes darted between the gun and the approaching killers outside. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool air. "What do you want?" "Tell them we're all dead," Boone said. "Tell them you recovered the papers and they can report success to their employers. They'll want to see bodies. Then you better be convincing." The circle of killers tightened. One of them shouted, "Dutch, answer now or we're coming in." Dutch looked at the blood-soaked bodies of Clem and Pike, then at the determined faces surrounding him. After a long moment, he made his choice. "Coming out," he called, his voice stronger than it had been. "Got the papers. All targets eliminated." He struggled to his feet with Ayanna's reluctant help, blood still trickling from his head wound. "Stay hidden until we're gone," he whispered, "and pray I don't change my mind." Dutch stumbled toward the door, clutching his head dramatically. "Had some trouble with the rancher," he called to his associates. "But it's done. Papers are secured." Through the gaps in the walls, Boone watched the leader approach Dutch, a tall man with cold eyes and expensive gear that marked him as different from common killers. "Where are the bodies?" the leader demanded. "Inside. Made a mess of it, but they're dead." Dutch held up the oiled cloth package that Kiona had given him, but this one contained only blank pages they'd torn from an old book in the shack. The leader examined the package briefly, then looked at Dutch's bloody appearance. "You look like hell." "Felt better," Dutch admitted. "The rancher got in some good shots before I finished him. And the Apache women? Dead as their husbands. Papers were hidden in the young one's dress, just like we suspected." The leader nodded grimly. "Good. The clients will be pleased." He gestured to his men. "Mount up. We ride back tonight." As the killers prepared to leave, Dutch looked back at the shack one final time. His eyes met Boone's through a crack in the wall. What happened next would determine whether Dutch Morrison was truly switching sides, or playing an elaborate game that would end with all of them dead. The sound of hoofbeats faded into the distance, leaving behind an oppressive silence. Boone waited a full 10 minutes before stepping out of the shack, his rifle ready for any sign of deception. The clearing was empty except for the bodies of Clem and Pike, and the muddy tracks of 7 horses heading east. "Think he really let us go?" Dakota asked, emerging with the others. "Time will tell," Boone replied, but something in Dutch's eyes during that final look suggested the man had made peace with his choice. Kiona still clutched the real documents against her chest. "What do we do now? Even if they believe we're dead, there might be others." Ayanna placed a weathered hand on her daughter's shoulder. "We do what your father would have wanted. We make sure these papers reach someone who can use them." Boone thought of his father, the quiet man who'd saved a dying Apache child and made a promise that would echo across decades. Some debts could only be paid forward. "I know someone," he said finally. "Federal Marshal Tom Bradley. He's based in Tucson, but he travels this territory regularly. He's one of the few honest lawmen left, and he's been trying to crack down on the railroad corruption for years." "Can we trust him?" Dakota asked. "My father trusted him once. Helped him track down some cattle rustlers near the border. Bradley's clean. I'd bet my life on it." "You are betting your life on it," Ayanna observed. "All our lives." They spent the next hour carefully going through the documents by lantern light. The evidence was damning. Dozens of names, specific amounts, detailed records of bribes and land theft. It was exactly what Kiona had described, and more. "This could change everything," Boone muttered, reading a page that detailed how Apache families were being systematically driven from their ancestral lands through fabricated legal documents. "It will change everything," Ayanna corrected, "if we get it to the right person." 2 days later, Boone sat across from Marshal Bradley in the lawman's temporary office in a small town 20 miles south. The documents were spread across the desk between them. Bradley read in silence for nearly an hour, his expression growing darker with each page. Finally, he looked up. "Son, do you understand what you've given me? Justice, I hope. Justice, chaos, and probably a new job." Bradley carefully stacked the papers. "Half the territorial government is going to be in federal prison before this is over, and the Apache families who lost their land will get it back. Every acre." Bradley's weathered face showed the first smile Boone had seen from him. This evidence is ironclad. No corrupt judge can dismiss this. That evening, Boone returned to his ranch to find the 3 Apache women waiting on his porch. They had cleaned up, treated their wounds, and somehow found fresh clothes. "Marshal Bradley," Ayanna asked, "has everything he needs. Says there'll be arrests within the week." Kiona stepped forward and held out his father's compass. "This belongs to you now." Boone took the familiar weight in his hands, feeling the connection to a father he'd never fully understood until now. "What will you do now?" "Go home," Ayanna said simply. "Back to our people. Tell them that justice is finally coming." As they prepared to leave, Dakota turned back to him. "Your father saved more than just Kiona's life 23 years ago. He saved the future of our entire tribe." Boone watched them ride away into the sunset, then looked down at the compass in his hands. The needle pointed true north, just as his father had taught him a man's conscience should. He'd gone looking for firewood and found something far more valuable: the knowledge that some promises are worth keeping, no matter how long they take to fulfill. If you enjoyed this story, click the video on your screen now to watch another unforgettable tale from the frontier, where courage and justice collide in ways you never expected. Don't forget to subscribe and consider a super chat to help us keep bringing you more stories like these. Your support means everything to us.